Hi there, my name is Cormate, and today I'm going to be sharing with you guys my predictions for healers in 10.1 for Aberrus the Shadow Crucible. The raid, of course. So I went to all the raid testing. I tested most of the healers, not all the healers for the most part, but someone in my guild was always testing at least one of the healers, so I have a pretty good idea of how the healers were performing, the kind of damage patterns we're seeing, and the kind of obstacles we're facing, except of course on the last boss. So I'm just going to jump right into it. I'm going to rank them based on the order that they're just randomly listed here on this tier list I found online. Okay, so I'm going to start with Disc Priest. So Disc Priest has been brought to every end boss of every end tier as far as I can ever remember rating, and it is only stronger than it was last year. They received quite a few buffs since season 1. They're now easier to play, they're easier on mana, new tiers looking good. I think they're in a really solid spot. I think we could possibly see some fights with 2 of them. I think that their utility as far as like bringing damage reduction, bringing PI, and just their kit is unmatched. So I'm definitely going to be putting them in S if you couldn't glean that from what I said already. Definitely at least going to be 1 in every single raid, possibly 2. I think they're super good right now. Like if you have a good player that's on one of them. One of the harder classes to play though, if you do decide to ever pick it up. But once you commit this priest, it's unlikely you'll ever get taken off of that thing if you're any good at it. Okay. On to the next is going to be Preservation Evoker. So Preservation Evoker was one of my mains for last year. It's the class I did the most progression on. Going forward, they got a lot of their kit nerfed between 10.05 and 10.07. A lot of it very deserved, a lot of reworked. Like when it came out of the gate going into the new expansion, because this was obviously the healer's first tier, they were way overpowered, so they got nerfed a lot. I think we should expect some playstyle changes, which I also have some other stuff on my YouTube if you're curious about that. They do have really good throughput. I think though that their healing style isn't always as great for the damage patterns we're seeing. I think Rewind is still a really good button, but I think the loss of like the reversion playstyle and like this bigger emphasis on like empowered spells feels a little bit clunky to me. So I'm actually going to be putting them in B. I definitely don't think they're bad. I think they're going to be competitive in HPS, but I do think they're going to have more mana problems than any of the other healers here. I think a lot of these other healers have gotten like fixes for their mana, like really good fixes, like they're super mana stable. I think Evokers are having the most mana problems right now, and that is actually my main reason for putting them in B. I think like the other healers bring similar HPS, maybe like different utility. Like if there's like another fight where you need like rescue and time spiral, like obviously that's going to catapult Evoker up to like the top. And also, but maybe not though, because Devastation's also looking good this tier, so you can actually just get those buttons from a Devastation Evoker because those things are looking busted. Okay, on to the next is going to be Holy Paladin. So Holy Paladin recently has been playing Avenging Crusader. They made Avenging Crusader now scale with Mastery. If you've tried playing Avenging Crusader before in these past couple expansions, it's been really bad. It basically makes it so their wings, they can just directly heal by doing damage. So they do pretty good like passive damage. They do really good healing, like in like this like pre-patch like week whatever. If you're looking at logs, like Paladins are definitely towards the top of the list. Great utility, short wall, bubble, 1 minute sack, AM, which is like the best DR you can get without having to be stacked. Like the best DR you can get is from disc with barrier, but your group has to be stacked. If you have to be spread out, then AM is the best. There's actually a lot of opportunity for stacking in this raid, which I forgot to mention for disc is really good for a disc freeze. But whenever you do have to be spread out, AM is also really good. And Holy Paladin is of course going in S. There is a possibility of running 2. I think that you won't run 2 because they do a lot of healing, but it's not as controlled, it's not as direct. And so I think there are other healers that might be brought, but I wouldn't be surprised either to see 2. Like these healers are all so close, it is hard to rank them and kind of make good predictions, but you're definitely going to have 1. Absolutely. Absolutely 1, maybe 2. Alright, next one is Holy Priest. So Holy Priest I think is in a really good spot. It's recently caught some nerfs that were deserved. If you remember in season 1 in Vault, there were quite a few Holy Priests being brought in the Racial first up until Razageth. Up until Razageth, there were quite a few of them, and when we got to Razageth, obviously priests couldn't stay on the platform, and that's when people started being like, oh, we're gonna play Evokers, they're quite a bit better. But they're really good. After that, they've gotten some, they got like an aura buff with 3%, and they got Divine Image buffed by a lot, and then they got parts of Divine Image nerfed, which was deserved, but they still do a lot of healing. They bring PI, And they also bring symbols, which symbols is really good because it resets the defensive on everyone. Well, it's like defensive dependent on the class that you are. But if your raid knows how to make good use of that button, it is so invaluable. It is just as good as any of the damage reductions that are brought by either Disc or Holy Paladin. Really good throughput. Divine Hymn, also good. It's another spell where the full value of it doesn't show up on the meters because it also gives like everybody a healing taken increase as well. But Holy Priest, really good throughput, utility, absolutely everything. I'm going to be putting them in A tier. So part of the reason I'm putting them in A tier because I don't think it's guaranteed that this healer gets a spot, and I'm going to talk about that in a second. But I think they're in a very good spot right now, like absolutely in a good spot. Right now I am playing between playing Evoker or Holy Priest in my raid going into this tier. So these are my two mains going forward. Okay, on to Mistweaver. So Mistweaver did not have a great tier last year, I would say. I would say they weren't as bad as Resto Shaman was at the beginning, but they were definitely struggling quite a bit with the kind of like damage patterns and stuff that was going on. But I think a lot of their problems have been fixed. Again, I mentioned this earlier, their new tier set is going to make them super monostable. It's going to buff the healing of Renewing Mist, Vivify. The tier set was also nerfed by quite a bit, but it still has like close to 50% uptime. And the spec has had a lot of really good quality of life changes. The biggest one, I think, being the Ancient Teachings change to make it into a smart heal. Before, it did quite a lot of overhealing, and now it does practically no overhealing. And then there's also been some other nice changes like Fae, if you want to play Fae, and Celestials giving a shield. Lots of other small things, but like overall, this has really good throughput, and most importantly, Windwalker's looking really bad this tier. So if you want to get your monk buff, which you definitely need at least one, your main sources are going to be either Brewmaster or Mistweaver. So there is a really good argument for a lot of raids for their 4th healer spot to be Mistweaver, because like if Mistweaver is going to get in, it's most likely going to be in the 4th healer spot. But there's a very good argument for them to be brought now because you do need the monk debuff, and they do really solid healing. I think that the monk debuff, I probably wouldn't be putting them in A, just because a lot of their healing is kind of like random and less controlled, so it's not as good for like prioritizing like the targets in the raid who need the healing the most at a certain time. But I do think they do really solid healing. I think the healing like kind of problem I was talking about earlier is the same with Holy Paladin and Mistweaver at times. Okay, on to Resto Druid. So Resto Druid was doing a lot of healing in Vault. It since caught quite a few nerfs over and over again, and then like just a couple days ago they had to give them like a 2% buff. They also nerfed their foresight because people thought it was too strong. I didn't think it was too strong at all. I thought it was just fine. I think the main thing is that the only thing Resto Druid is really bringing is throughput. They don't have, like, they have Mark of the Wild, but for the most part you're probably going to be having a Boomkin in your raid because they're like, they don't have the most amazing damage, but they're just like a durable range class that is great at doing mechanics and brings other things that you need. Anyways, I think they need to have a bit more throughput to justify them having a spot, and so I really disliked like all the nerfs they gave them, especially since their kind of healing power, or like healing pattern, I should say, not power, is super redundant with Disc Priest. Like, they're both just ramp classes that like have ramps on short CDs, and they're super powerful ramps, but given the choice between two classes that can do like Resto does do more HPS than Disc, but Disc also brings like PI and barrier and all these other great things and better damage. Like, this is the best damage healer that you can get for the most part when you just look at passive damage, not active damage. But passive damage is important for prog. So, and I said this in my tier list at the beginning of Dragonflight too, it is in many ways a worse Disc Priest. Now, this is an exception on a fight if you remember something like Dathia. Like Dathia was like a very bad fight for Disc because of the amount of movement. So that is where Resto Druid does shine, is that they can do Disc healing, Disc ramp healing, while being like relatively mobile and being able to deal with those kinds of mechanics. There weren't many fights that felt like they had that level of finesse or like movement that is needed during like damage, so I'm definitely going to be putting Resto Druid with Evoker in B. Again, not to say they're bad, I just do not foresee them being like the meta classes. Like, the classes I'm putting in S and A are the ones that I feel like are like gonna be used in the race world first, most likely. And I feel like these classes are really good, super viable. Like I said, I am planning on playing a B tier spec, so please do not read into it too much. Okay, on to our last one, which is Resto Shaman. So Resto Shaman has received buff after buff. They have always been a great raid healer because they're kind of like the equalizer. So the way their mastery works, they do better healing to lower health targets. They just have constant throughput, and they also have a lot of CDs. Like, so like in the past, they used to just be like this kind of constant throughput healer, and all they really had was like Link, which was a great CD obviously, but it was a throughput CD, and then Healing Tide, which was relatively weak. But now they have things like they can easily get to like Ascendance, and so they can take like the Monetide Totem Talent if they want, and then they're most reliant on Chain Heal. They're a little bit mana hungry, but I would not say that they're the most mana hungry now. And I definitely think that they're going to have a raid spot. I'm actually going to be putting them in S. I think that for the most part, we're going to see every single raid having at least one disc, one Holy Paladin, one Resto Shaman. And then I think that fourth spot, if you need the monk debuff, is always gonna be monk. And then other than that, I think the fourth spot is most likely Holy Priest. But it could also just be another copy of one of these, or another copy of one of these, and I think all are great options. I think the healing balance is so good and on point for the most part right now. The only one I feel like that really needs something is Resto Druid, but maybe I'm completely wrong. But yeah, I think everything's in a really good spot. This is kind of like a hard tier to like list everything because it's so hard to judge what's going to be good, especially when you haven't seen the last boss yet, because that is the determining factor actually on what is mostly brought, is because you just care about the last boss and just bringing the characters like we brought to the last boss, you can get them up. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. Good luck this tier. Hope you have a good one. Bye.